Do you believe voting matters? I make the argument that voting matters more locally than it does federally, but there are a lot of people who don't believe their vote matters. Probably that number has gone down, or at least people will be more interested in voting, due to what decisions have been made more recently. But for those who believe that voting doesn't matter, um, I think Mamdani is an example that voting does matter, right? There's a lot of things that need to happen to make change. It's not good enough to get one person who wants to reform or go do right by the people. You have to get one person in every single position of office to do that. I think the issue is that a lot of people who want to do good, they make promises, not realizing that the position they're vying for is going to have roadblocks to that promise that other offices have the power to do. And it's like you have this whole row of dominoes in front of you, and you want to hit these dominoes at the end, but you got to knock over the domino in the beginning. And that domino in the beginning is not, you do not have authority over that domino in the beginning in the office that you vie for. And so a lot of people with only ideologies wind up making unintentionally false promises. If you ask me if we're going to make a noticeable change in my generation, I don't think so, right? But you have to think that this current system that we have is a result of decades of molding and of institutionalization and indoctrination and abusing people's faith in their government. So those who have faith in their government are also typically the ones that are being conditioned by education from a young age. And those who have lost faith in the government, those are typically the people who don't think that their vote matters. So now what you have is you have an imbalance of voting influence. If only 5% of the population is voting, hypothetically, right? That means that a very minor amount of people have a very powerful influence over the decision in the political offices that are voted for. So by not voting, you're allowing a minor group of people to have a decision. Also, I make the argument that if you vote, whether your vote wins, whether you think your vote matters, you have more of a right to complain than somebody who doesn't vote. Somebody who doesn't vote is choosing to decide to let whatever happens, happens. And I completely understand that mindset. However, I find it interesting for one person to feel that they have earned the right to complain about something that for all intents and purposes they have given up on, and are part, more than likely, of the problem. Speaking as one of those people who used to not believe in voting. Federal level voting, I'm still iffy about, but I think we have a lot more power on local voting. Regardless of the outcome of a vote, at least if you voted, you tried. You put in energy, you put in effort, and you filled in a bubble, right? If you actually, put in earnestly, not you just Christmas treat it, right? Then you have a right to complain about things because you see a way of doing things differently and it wasn't given a chance versus somebody just being like, well, whatever happens, happens. I don't have any, I can't do anything. I'm just one person. Because how many just one persons think like that? And when it's many just one persons, it becomes the majority. If each grain of sand in a dune decided that if was sentient, decided that it didn't want to support anymore, then that dune would cease to exist. I make the argument that there are two things that need to happen for us to fix this system. The first thing is that more people need to vote. However, that alone is not enough. More people need to vote, and more people need to vote for the person that they want to vote for, regardless of the chance of that person to make it. Right? Don't settle. Don't vote for a lesser of two evils. If you're going to vote for a lesser of two evils, then I mean, at that point, your vote really doesn't matter. I think it makes more sense to vote for somebody who you want to vote for, that you don't think you have a chance, or that you think doesn't have a chance. It's all psychology. If you have a lot of people, if the main mindset is that voting doesn't matter and don't vote for that person because that person doesn't have a chance, that's the truth, right? Because collectively people have decided that I'm not going to vote for that person because nobody else is going to vote for that person, and voting for that person doesn't matter and it's a waste of my vote. And you're not the only person who has that philosophy, but it's wrong, right? Because so many people have that philosophy. That's why your vote doesn't matter. You need to get more people with the idea that voting does matter, and that not to expect the system to completely change over time. If it does, great. That's a bonus. It's unexpected, but minimal, small things, right? And over time, you will have the system that you want, one that benefits the people, that benefits the children and the working class, and it no longer benefits the minority over the majority. And if you think voting doesn't matter and it's all pre-decided, you have to look at the outliers. At the end of the day, you have to acknowledge that outliers exist. Bernie Sanders is an outlier. I would make the argument that presently, based off what's happening, that Mamdani is an outlier. Outliers do exist, but you have to give them a chance. The other issue is you got to set time aside to vote properly. You have to do research. Not a lot of people want to come home from working all week and spend their free time doing homework, which is what it is. They would like to believe that the people who are voted for are going to have um, the best in mind for the people that they're governing, but I think that we can all agree that that's just not what's happening. I feel like what's happening is the people who want power or authority are the ones who are gaining office, not the ones that actually want to make a change, right? And one of the things that we need to look at is how people treat the invisible. I have changed my position, for instance, on Katie Porter. Why? Because one of my other friends, who we have disagreements, but I'm not opposed to reevaluating my perspectives. I was originally going to vote for Katie Porter for um, governor. Now I'm going to go on Bueller. And even if Bueller isn't on the general, I'm going to write her name in because that person is in alignment with my values. I think more so than what a person ideas they have of what the problems are and the same stuff that everybody regurgitates. It's not good enough to have ideas. You need to have a plan of action. If you don't have a plan of action, you have a fantasy. And you also need to look at how people treat other people. How do they treat, waiters? How do they treat assistants? How do they treat people who they do not think are important? Because the people who treat those people well, that means that those people will treat anybody well. And those are the people that you want to run for offices. The people who do not have a superiority complex. The people who are humble, and the people who are willing to sacrifice their time and their energy to contribute to the progression of, their people, their communities.